another different episode of Through the Web. It's different because for those who are watching it online, you would know the difference. We're not in a studio. We are, in fact,
Hopefully.
in a virtual studio, if that makes any sense. But for those of you watching and listening in, welcome back to another show. It's been a while since we did this, almost 2 weeks now, Dagogo. And
Yes.
lots have happened since then. So I want to pass it off to you, man. How have
Yeah.
you
So
been?
the reason that we're doing it virtually is because I'm going through COVID at the moment. So just as a precaution, deciding to do it remotely. But yeah, so I've been doing that, just trying to recover and doing some videos and stuff in the background, but nothing too exciting. Except for the fact that I am leaving on a trip to Amsterdam next week, which you guys will hear more about probably in the next episode. Um, but yeah, that's about it from me. What about you, Tawsif?
Well, so far I have avoided COVID still, fingers crossed. But it seems like everybody around me is getting it.
Mm.
But how did you fare though? Like have you been feeling okay?
Yeah, so it hasn't been too bad. It hasn't been, shortness of breath or anything. That's all like the
Yeah.
previous version. So really what it's been is just fatigue, a bit of quite a persistent headache, really. So it was hard to
Mm.
do stuff, and just a sore throat. So, I would say that the actual flu that I had
Yeah.
a few years back was worse. I'd
Mm.
say that the most annoying thing is the fatigue and headache, but it's still
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
everyone's getting it differently. But yeah, it's people I know have been really struggling. Some people like yourself and people didn't even realize that they had it. So before we turn this into a full on a COVID breakdown episode, by then I think people are bored of it. I think everyone's getting it by this
Yeah,
stage.
yeah, yeah.
But other than that, is anything interesting you watched this week? I'm sure you had a lot of time in your hands to watch stuff. So did you watch anything
Yeah, no,
interesting?
there was a few things. But one channel that I discovered recently is called Mentor Pilot. So
Okay.
he's a professional pilot that actually goes through, when an accident happens, like he goes through the investigation beforehand, researches it all, and then kind of puts it as a story with animations and all this kind of stuff of what went wrong, what the pilots could have done better, all that kind of
Mm.
stuff. And yeah, it kind of has a lesson at the end of it of sometimes general in life and sometimes
Right.
specifically to do with flying. So I think he just did a really good job in terms of how he does his videos. So that's, I guess, the golden
I
discovery so
think,
far. How about
yeah.
yourself?
I've been watching this series called Super Pumped. It's a Paramount Plus, yet another streaming service. It's on Paramount Plus, original. And I got a free trial because I needed to watch a soccer game that was only on Paramount Plus. But then I stuck around to watch this show because it's about the story of Travis Kalanick, who's the CEO or ex CEO of Uber. And it's like a short 7 episode miniseries about the birth of Uber and how basically the rise and fall of the CEO. And I think I loved how they portrayed it. It's not a very artsy or very well acted series per se, but it's
Okay.
got some big names like Uma Thurman and I forgot the Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I think is his name,
Mm.
and then a few other big names as well, right? So it's not as great from that perspective in terms of acting, but it's good to see the story, the actual story, or somewhat truth about how the CEOs really act. In some ways, we discussed about how some CEOs are quite interesting, have some interesting personality traits. That's shown in a very dramatic way in the
Yeah.
show. That's why I really enjoyed it, even though it wasn't
Okay.
like a grade A kind of stuff, but it was
Yeah.
quite enjoyable. And funny thing is, more interesting thing is, it's actually a part of an anthology. So the first one's Uber, the next one's going to be Meta. So Zuckerberg's the next one,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, so they're
Okay.
gonna do it, like, I think, based on different CEOs.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
that is now the hook for me to think if I should keep my Paramount Plus or keep opening new accounts to get free trials for the unforeseeable for future.
Yeah, that's the big question. But that actually sounds like a really good idea for a series. I think it's kind of turning into these big stories that we hear, like for example, Theranos,
Yeah.
WeWork, all of these things, they're getting turned into
Yes.
movies. So it's like
Yes.
I don't know. We're just living in that time where there's a lot of interesting stuff happening.
Yeah, and I
So
was thinking, like, I wonder how these CEOs would react to them being
I
reenacted.
think about that.
You
I
know,
really
like
think
I
about
think about like how are they being, because they're being portrayed in not always a very positive light. And especially these are celebrities or actors who are quite big in their stature. So I think that, okay, they probably grew up watching these characters and actors, and now they're being, represented by them on these
Yeah,
shows that are being portrayed negatively about them. So
yeah,
I wonder what goes on to their head. But
yeah.
dude, yeah, so that's what I watched. I'd recommend any of the listeners, if you're watching in, if you're interested in that kind of stuff. But do you have a comment of the week for me?
It's by this pop-up's coming up on the screen. Sorry, it's by Miss Worldmine. It says, "Wow, these podcasts are great. Make sure you advertise them in your main channel. I'm gonna binge watch them and listen. Keep it up." So I guess yeah, that's just a pointer for me to advertise a bit more on the main channel. But
Yeah, and it's funny because I've been seeing a lot more of those comments as well recently, where they're saying, "Oh, I had no idea Dagogo is a podcast," and they only found out. So sometimes we think we say too much and or advertise too much, but a lot of people actually don't get it. The
yeah,
difficult part is somebody who follows us regularly might keep seeing the advertisements
that's
too
what I
much.
always worry about. It's
Yeah,
like
and they might be put off, but then there's a
yeah,
whole other crowd who have never seen it or heard about it. So it's a um, tough balance. Yeah, well, for me, my favorite comment of the week is from Lily. She says the world may be chaotic and in disarray, but what remains consistent is my weekly dose of through the web. A very nice comment. Very good to see that we are consistent amongst the chaos
we're
that
trying.
presents in the world. We're trying our best. But I just want to, before we get into the topic, just want to apologize if the setup is a little bit different to what you usually see, and the voice is a little bit different, the audio quality as well. We're definitely missing Brayden, our main
Yeah.
producer of the show. So hopefully it's tolerable before we get back to the studio. Um, Before we get into the main topics, I want to talk about the thing you posted on Twitter about Google Imagen and Dall-E 2. This comparison image of this bird on a bed of rainbow macarons,
Microns.
was it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I quite like the Google Imagen photo better in some
Did
ways. So
you
for
did you
those,
look did you look at the thread? Because there's like a set of like
a
eight
few
images
more.
or something.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
there's
know. I
like a
actually
set.
saw the one. Okay, let me just go
Yeah,
to it right now. But I just want
there's
to quickly, before as I look
yeah.
at that, like, what are your overall thoughts in terms of, when we looked at Dall-E 2, we were like blown away, and Google Imagine just pops up.
Hmm.
Um, what's the idea there in terms of, like these new similar stuff coming up and probably doing better?
Yeah, so with DALL-E 2, that was such a far leap above any other AI generated art that we'd seen. So
Yeah.
I was thinking it would just be DALL-E 3 next time that would be better. But this Google Imagen, like it seems like it's kind of the threshold that DALL-E 2 like blew everything open, and then this Google one kind of came through like in second place just quickly. But I think looking at the images, I think they're comparable in terms of like their quality
Yeah.
most of the time, but it seems like the Google software seems to understand and interpret text a little bit better than
Mm.
DALL-E 2, which I find incredible because
Yeah.
DALL-E 2 was built off GPT-3, which is like a huge, like multi-billion word language model, and it understood stuff like context better than most things. So for Google to come out and do this,
Mm.
well, I guess like it makes sense for it to be Google because their AI staff is some of the best in the world. So if it was any company that was going to come after OpenAI, it would be Google. So I think what we're seeing is like this is the next race. It's the
Mm.
next arms race of a new technology, and it seems like the limits aren't even fathomable at this point.
No.
Because yeah, within a year, like who knows what it will be? We'll start seeing little videos, and then in 5 years, you get like little animated movies that you just
Yeah,
speak
pretty
a
much.
sentence and it just makes it. So very interesting. What about yourself?
Yeah, I was just looking through the thread as you spoke, and yeah, you're right. I think the Google Imagine probably picks it up a little bit better.
Mm.
Um, there's this video that I shared with you as well last week or a few days ago was MKBHD's third or fourth channel called The Studio. Basically,
Yeah.
it's about his team and everything. And they did this video on his graphic designer versus Dall-E 2,
Dall-E too, yeah.
and they gave like prompts to both of them. And obviously, the graphic designer will take hours to build or create something, and Dall-E 2 would be more instantaneous. But the interesting thing was how they did three, and out of the three, people preferred the human ones more, and they felt that the human, like the graphic designers versions, were more accurate to the text. So I think, even if we're getting to that point of great technological advancements, I think that human touch is something that'll still take a long, long time to replicate. However, keeping in mind that it took the graphic designer 3 hours or 4 hours to build that, and when we're creating something like this, are we going to consider that, right? Like, is it worth waiting a few hours to get something that's very, or is it okay to compromise on that a little bit and get
Yeah,
something
but
that's close to that, you know?
yeah, that's the major question. Is like if we're talking about corporations that want to design and they just care about their bottom line, like they're not going to care.
No.
They're
Yeah.
just going to use the AI, which is, I don't know. It's a little frightening to think about. But on the other side of that, though, like you say, the human touch will be have a step ahead for a long time to come. Like I would have said that 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but seeing what Dali 2 has done, like I didn't think this was possible at this time. So like I'm now just like I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I
What's
don't know when in
next?
a few years. Yeah. So
Yeah, I personally feel that this will decrease that those dynamic jobs or hybrid jobs that require art, but in the professional industry. So, like graphic design, for example, is very creative. It's artsy kind of role, but then in a professional setting, it I think DALL-E 2 will replace those roles a little bit more.
mm,
But in the world of art, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. I think people will still prefer, and actually, in fact, I think the demand for art will grow, because then people can start seeing that the differences between what's AI generated and what's actually has some human element. But like you said, who knows?
that difference may shrink. Yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, it'll be a space to watch for sure.
For sure. Moving on, you made a video which did really well, over 1.5 million views in
Yeah,
less than a week
1.6, I
now,
think. Yeah.
which is great. But it is at the at the expense of Do Kwon, the Terra Luna founder, and the guy who basically flew the flag of the stablecoin, which obviously now, for those who don't know, is a disastrous situation, wiping out
Yeah.
billions in the crypto market, as well. Now, right after you posted that video, there's a news on TechCrunch that said that the creator Do Kwon faces prosecution in South Korea, where he's originally from. So the Seoul Southern District's prosecutor's office said that it has kicked off an investigation on Terraform Labs, the organization behind the stablecoin Project Terra, led by Do Kwon, and assigned the case to its Financial and Securities Crime Joint Investigation Team. It's a special financial crimes unit that was brought back recently by the newly appointed Justice Minister, according to local media. So they seem to have a lot of focus on what was happening, even though it was not happening in South Korea. But given his ties in the country, he, according to local media, he will probably face prosecution in the country. So things aren't looking too good. But he went on to say a second version of it's coming out, and
Yeah.
he urged people to buy what this was the deadline of yesterday.
So look, I think Terra. So forming Terra 2.0 at a time like this is incredible. I think it's absolutely the most brazen move to do. Like you've lost people's life savings. There's been so many stories and anecdotes of people committing suicide
Yeah.
over the situation, which is really sad. And like to cause so much distress and destruction among the people that trusted you, and then to turn around and be like, "Oh, do you want to do it again?" Like I think that's it's insane. But yeah, so in terms of the prosecution, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that because getting into the inner workings of Luna and like who owned like most of the capital that was transferred. There's some talk of like some of the capital that was transferred to save Luna when it was crashing
Mm.
wasn't actually fully sent over. So like some of it's missing, etc. So like going into the inner workings of Luna, you're not sure who's doing what or like what exactly is going on. So I can't really comment on if he's dead set guilty or not, but obviously he's dodgy for sure.
Mm,
And obviously that 20% rate that people
return.
were receiving was unsustainable. Although I didn't mention this in the video, but I did cut it out. But essentially, that was supposed to be like a teaser rate to get people in the door, and then as the market continued, it was supposed to reduce, so it would become sustainable. But the thing is, like, obviously, people came in too quickly, and the whole thing couldn't support itself anyway. So, um, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they discover in this case and what the South Korean jurisdiction decides to do over this. Do you have any thoughts?
No, man, not really on top of what you just said. I think it is crazy to think that he'd be out there doing a 2.0 version while things have literally just fallen apart. I
Yeah.
don't know what kind of, I don't know, like, I don't have the word to explain it, but what kind of bravery or stupidity you need to have to be able to do something like that. And then this is again going back to the conversation of how some of these founders and CEOs and I guess creators of these things are
Very
just not,
narcissistic.
yeah, like just
Yeah.
not wired to think that they can ever fall, right? And again, going back to the Super Pumped series, you'll see what I mean. It's very clear as to how they think. Even though it was dramatized, but it was very very clear. So yeah, man, it's something to follow around, and we'll see what happens from here on.
Mm.
Going on about to talk about our most talked about topic in the history of through the web, just aligning in time to the point of his rise in the Twitter world.
Yeah.
Um, Elon Musk back again on the show. I think we just need to have like bracket Elon, like through the web podcast bracket Elon Musk
So
discussion
I
thread.
think who was it? I saw a tweet. I think it was by the Verge founder. What's his name? I forget what his name is,
Yeah,
but yeah, he put a tweet like saying like Elon Musk is doing so much stuff, like they should have a segment just called like This Week in Elon. So it's
yeah,
like,
same
yeah,
same as what we talked about exactly this week in
yeah,
Elon's life,
yeah,
right? But this week, what happened was he was sued by Twitter shareholders. So a new lawsuit on behalf of Twitter shareholders was filed against Elon Musk in federal district court in San Fran on Wednesday night, alleging that the CEO of Tesla was actively manipulating the company's stock for personal gain. While his Musk's behavior is unusual, there's been no clear attempt from the CEO to cancel or negotiate the deal. Nonetheless, the complaints claim are born out of the unusual behavior of Twitter stock, which continues to trade significantly below the agreed upon buyout price.
right.
Um, so
So
that's the story.
was this one shareholder or a group of shareholders? Because I
I
did
think
hear a
I think
story.
it's on behalf of shareholders, so it's multiple.
Okay, because I did hear this story actually like a few days ago, and it was one shareholder at the time, so maybe it kind of grew.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be hard to prove that it's doing it for profit. I don't know how you're going to prove that.
Yeah, and I think it's again the how his behavior around certain things is probably going to work against him if it does hold up in court because again it's the stuff he talks about, the way he acts, the way he doesn't care about things. I think it just could act against him, right?
Yeah,
And also the fact that is been going head to head against the SEC multiple times as well. And I think even now SEC is getting involved. I can't remember. I think I just saw a headline ticker a few days back. This SEC is again getting involved with Elon. So I don't know. All these things can come into play and could hold up against him because. But the thing that mentioned in the news piece is that he is not walking away from it. Right. He's just holding off until certain things are being cleared. So yeah.
mm,
But the fact is that there is tension in the room, and even if it goes again, with the buyout, with all the things that's happening around Twitter, I don't know what the next step is from here, right? I think it's even if he takes over, how's it going to look? What's going to happen?
Yeah,
who's gonna stay, who's gonna go.
yeah. Jack
He
Dorsey
tweeted,
just left the board. I don't know if you
I
heard.
know,
Yeah, he
I
stepped
know.
down. So
He just stepped down, and he tweeted about that as well in a funny way. Uh, this guy, but it's good to see. He did mention that Elon's a fan of Jack, and he loved what he's done with his with Twitter. So in some ways, I guess. So yeah, but that wasn't the only thing with Elon this week. So he went on to say in his usual Twitter rants and barrage of tweets that the approaching the you know the that he believes that the world approaching a recession is actually a good thing. And he said, he remarked that it's been raining money on fools for too long. Some bankruptcies need to happen. And his remarks came at rather odd time because Tesla stocks have been plunging over the last few weeks, especially after he revealed his plan to buy Twitter. But in the follow-up tweets, he also argued the next recession could last about 12 to 18 months, noting that the companies that are inherently negative cash flow need to die so that they stop consuming resources.
that.
And then
Sorry.
adding that the COVID-19 lockdowns are making people lazy, and all the COVID stay-at-home stuff has tricked people into thinking that you don't actually need to work hard. A rude awakening is inbound.
Okay, I don't know about that last sentence, but I think though he's actually right in terms of like raining money on what do you say, dumb fools for too long or whatever.
Yeah,
But like the environment that we've had until very recently, from 2008 till like 2020, when we had like zero interest rates and like lots of fiscal spending and all of this kind of stuff, what it was doing was it was making companies that shouldn't have been profitable or like shouldn't have
yeah,
been around and like literally they're taking smart staff, people that are working, human capital away from other companies because they're going to work at like this NFT startup or whatever, because the whole thing shouldn't have been there. So what he's trying to say is when we have a recession like his claiming, it's going to be kind of washing out all the rot. So like all the misallocated capital, all the bubbles, all the things that shouldn't be there that are there only because of the economic environment that we're in. And once we do that, then like it'll be like a clearing of the system will be hard. It'll be like people will lose their jobs. It will be quite hard for like 18 months. But once the rebuilding starts, it would actually be healthier for the economy. And I think that's what the business cycle used to be. It used to be like every 7 or 8 years would have a little recession to clear
yeah,
out some of the bad debt. But that's just how it used to work. But now it's kind of like one extended boom that just kept
yeah.
going for too long. So I think
So,
he's right,
yeah.
fundamentally.
So you reckon it's actually gonna be a good thing eventually?
Yeah, like I think it has to happen. But I think, yeah, ultimately it has to be a good thing because, if we just keep going like this, we're just going to get stuff that just like lots of distortions in markets and things just don't make sense anymore. And
Yeah.
you're going to get, yeah, like wealth inequality and all of that stuff, and it's just going to keep going. So,
Right, and like as if that was enough, S&P 500 booted Tesla from its ESG index as part of the annual update to the list. So ESG is the environmental, social, and governance data. So as part of that index that S&P 500 has, it's taken Tesla out of that list. The reason being, and this is an interesting part, it said that Tesla's lack of low carbon strategy and codes of business conduct, along with racism and poor working conditions reported at Tesla's factory in California, affected the score. And Tesla's handling of an investigation by the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration also weighed on its score. So basically, it's the ESG index that S&P 500 has. It's taking Tesla off there. Naturally, Elon came back with a response saying that Exxon is rated top 10 best in the world for environment, social, and governance by S&P 500, while Tesla didn't even make the list. ESG is a scam, and it has been weaponized by phony social justice warriors, and that the S&P global rankings has lost all its integrity.
Elon, he kind of just, yeah, says it, doesn't he? Um, Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure about this ESG thing. I haven't really heard that much about it. So I can't really comment on how important it is. But yeah, I've been hearing some of the complaints that they had
Yeah.
in terms of the NTSB and some of the racism in their factories. But honestly, I haven't looked into it too deeply to make a comment. But it is an interesting point that was it ExxonMobil is top 10 somehow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's some little paybacks going on maybe.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part, isn't it? Because all these oil and gas companies just has this big stake on so many things, and I don't know if it's lobbying or just behind the doors kind of stuff. And the whole idea of Elon trying to push through it and then now getting booted out, it makes you, I guess, wonder what if there's actually a I don't know, like a full on uh, horns being locked by these giants in
Yeah.
the back end, and we're just not aware, and these things are just part of a game
Big
that we're
fluff.
only
Yeah.
seeing parts of,
Yeah.
or whether it's actually they're super into this kind of ESG stuff and they're really passionate about environmental stuff, and Exxon actually is doing well. We just don't know.
Well, yeah, I haven't heard about that. So, um, yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like, I don't know, like Elon going into Twitter and trying to buy it and all of this kind of stuff. Like, it's interesting that you put it like maybe there's this big thing going on and we're only getting
Yeah,
glimpses of it through Elon because he's
I
just kind of
know.
saying he just blabs and says everything. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, we just get the trickle down stuff. Moving on from Elon, finally, an interesting story on WhatsApp. So this is more. I thought I'd bring this up because, we primarily use WhatsApp obviously for personal messaging and stuff like that. But the WhatsApp business side is actually huge, especially in South Asian developing countries where people primarily use WhatsApp for building businesses and communicating and all that kind of stuff. So WhatsApp actually introduced a cloud-based API service. So what that means is any business or a dev can easily access the service and build directly on top of WhatsApp to customize the experience, speed of response time to customers by using the API, which is hosted by Meta. What this also does is it'll eliminate costly server expenses and give them instant access to new features, customizable click to chat links. So basically, if you're a business, you'll have access to their full suite, and build stuff on top of WhatsApp to
So,
customize anything that
so
you need.
yeah, I think it's going to be very profitable for them probably.
Yeah.
That's probably the main reason. Um, yeah, like I don't really have much to comment other than it's interesting, and I hope that like the security. Um, Obviously, WhatsApp's good for end-to-end encryption, surprisingly, but
Yeah.
just that Facebook or Meta doesn't have like some kind of back end or something that has vulnerability issues or
So I think,
something like that.
and I include the story because this is where we compared WhatsApp to Telegram a few weeks back, or a few episodes back now actually, and I think we look at these things mostly as an individual kind of platforms where I use it as an individual to talk to another individual, but this whole business side I think is where Meta and Amazon and Google are winning, and Microsoft as well, because this is where things like Telegram or others probably haven't been able to break into the scene, right? Because I can't imagine a Telegram doing the same thing for their users or building businesses on top where they'll be able to help other businesses at that scale.
Mm.
I don't know if like do you know if they have something like
No,
this?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I think this is where it's just not about the basic privacy policies that we're so much concerned about. It's also about building businesses on top and reaching to customers and audiences.
Mm. But I was more talking about like security, like hacking, for example. Like
True.
remember the recent who was it? Was it Samsung that got hacked by that teenager or something, or stuff like that?
Was that wasn't it Apple? Not hacked, but the forging. Is that the one you're talking about? Forging
No, there's
documents?
another
No.
one, but
Hmm.
quite recently. But anyway, actually, this is totally off topic, but it's
Yeah.
just in a similar vein. So I got a Twitter message from this guy in Argentina, and he
Okay.
was telling me about this case that's just come up, and apparently there's this guy that managed to it was a bit hard to read translated. I have to go back and read it. But I think what it was, the story was like he managed to fake credit cards, so generate the numbers and generate the PIN numbers, and just use these fake credit cards to buy stuff.
Mm.
And essentially, he ended up being caught. I'm not sure how, but in total, would have been the equivalent to like 10 or 20,000 US dollars that he spent. But the authorities saw this and thought it was like some massive government group or some criminal masterminds, but it was just this like I don't know, 50-year-old guy with a piece of paper that was writing down the algorithms and like managed to crack it. So I was like,
Wow.
it's insane. So I have to vet that story and check that it's true. But it was in one of the biggest newspapers in Argentina. So um,
Wow.
very interesting that one.
That's so cool. So cool in the sense of how these stories can exist and we don't hear about them.
Yeah, no.
And then there's people just coming to you and wanting you to cover that stuff. And then this is where we spoke about on a different level, but I think this is where being that alternative source of information for your audience and for what we're building is so cool because we get so many different perspective of things that we wouldn't otherwise get.
Yeah, there's no way you'd dig for this story. It's not
Yeah,
like
like I wouldn't see this on The Verge, for example, this week or
yeah,
something like that, unless it really made it on the
yeah.
front page of everywhere. So no, it's very cool. Final story of the day. I know this is again a bit of a different episode because we're not face to face, which sucks. But um, this one is about Walmart, um, and they've announced drone deliveries. So they've got this drone up program, which basically which will allow for delivering packages via drones. So customers will be able to order from eligible items that weigh 10 pounds or less for $3.99 and can expect packages to be delivered in as less as 30 minutes. Now, funnily enough, Walmart initially envisioned this to be done for emergency and medical items,
Mm.
but the center's most purchased items for drone delivery is actually the hamburger helper.
That says everything, doesn't it?
So I thought it was a funny twist, but I I just want to kind of talk to you about this, not so much because Walmart announced it or the fees or anything like that, but more so what you think about the concept of drone deliveries because it's something that's been promised by tech worlds, or
Mm.
either through sci-fi shorts or just drones flying and delivering. I think from Jetsons, I remember we probably so the Jetsons where they did that
Yeah.
first, but something like that. What do you think the future of drone deliveries are, if at all?
Well, okay, so there's a few things, but like going back a little bit, I think, yeah, 2012, I remember 2013, 2014, around that time, there was like all this talk about drones like being the next thing in terms of delivery and all of that, and it didn't really seem to pan out that quickly. But I think the main thing you kind of have to weigh up is like number one is like the failure rate, like what if you did 100 orders, how many of them would fail, and you have to see if that number is low enough, balancing that out with replacing drivers and like fuel costs and everything. It seems like very positive in that aspect in terms of the money you'll save and the labor that you'll save. But it's just a matter of the technology being robust enough to be able to reliably deliver the payloads. So I don't know if Walmart has done that calculation and they've said it works, but I think it's just a matter of like being reliable. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong with drone deliveries. So yeah, I think it's an interesting idea, and if it works, that's good. I don't really have anything against it. How about yourself?
Yeah, I can't picture it in the sense of how it will logistically work. Like if everybody gets into the market, it's the same thing about flying cars. Like how do you manage a traffic of these things? Just like with my with as I'm walking down the street, which I just keep seeing. I don't know, like
So
tens
so
of
you're
twenties
talking
of drones.
yeah, so you're talking about like mass adoption. So it's like if instead of
That's
having
right.
Uber Eats or something, you'd get a drone to do it.
That's
Yeah,
right, and I think
that's a
yeah, yeah.
different issue completely. But yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to think. Like, I think as a concept, it works for one or two different deliveries. But if a company like Walmart's announcing that they want to do this stuff on the regular basis, um, that is still is wouldn't you call it part of a mass adoption strategy?
Well, yeah, Walmart is huge. depends on how big they want the service to be and how fast they roll it out. But if they're doing hundreds or thousands of orders a day, I'd say that's pretty mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like when you just start getting like saturated drainage in the sky, what happens? But I'm sure there's like object detection on these drones to avoid each other and stuff, and that's kind of worked out. But still, like there's noise.
Yeah.
Citizens would be happy, and like could be a bit dangerous if something was to go wrong, and drone falls on someone's head with a payload. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
You got the
it's not
hamburger
great.
just.
But yeah, and you might get people trying to steal stuff.
Yeah.
Shoot it down with a BB gun and take the stash. So, yeah, it's it's one of those things where it's like there's potential to go wrong, but it could work.
Yeah, I don't
Potentially.
see like, and because of those reasons, I don't see it being adopted at a mass level because like I'm just thinking if I'm just out of the balcony right now, and it's like I don't know, the hundreds of thousands of orders is not even like it's way out of the question, but just 10 orders on
Mm,
my street. There's like 10 drones flying around. Like it's not a
mm,
sight I'd be too
yeah,
pleased to see. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So yeah, I don't know how this might work out in the future.
yeah. I'd say like if we're going to give it a probability rating, let's say at this moment it's probably a four,
Why
four
four?
orders.
It's very specific, Dagogo. It's
Less than
very
fifty
specific.
percent, but not much.
All right, we will wrap up shortly, but before we go, we'll probably answer a few questions. There are quite a few interesting ones from over the last few episodes, so we'll go through them. So the first one is from Jonathan Saul. He asks, I'm always on the lookout for quality YouTube channels and podcasts, and Cold Fusion is one of my benchmark subscriptions. So would be really interesting to hear a little detail on some of your own favorites, influences, and inspiration. Thanks for the amazing pod, guys. Very engaging whilst being laid back at the same time. All the best to you both. Thanks, Jonathan. This is actually quite laid back because we're now at our homes right
I
now,
know, right?
so
My
couldn't
kitchen.
be more laid back, literally.
Yeah. Um, yeah, cool. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. That was very, very nice. In terms of inspirations, it depends on what aspect you're talking about. If you're talking about like the general feel of my videos, that would be like documentaries from the 80s and 90s, maybe early 2000s, kind of a bit slower paced, not as many jump cuts or anything crazy. Kind of clear information and it's just factual. It's no hype, no anything else. That's probably the inspiration there. Vsauce was another early one because I just loved the way he delivered
Yeah, it was great.
content and made it just very interesting, like facts that otherwise wouldn't be, but he just managed to do that.
Mm.
Um, Otherwise, there's quite a few channels that I do like Vox as well. I like. There's actually a gaming channel called Ahoy, which I recently showed to Tawsif, but
Yeah.
he's got a couple of videos that are just incredible in the way that he does it, and his narration is like second to none.
Mm.
Lemino as well, I'm a big fan of him. A lot of people say that we're similar because he makes music as well, but
Right.
yeah, so I guess there's like around that area, that kind of thing would be my general inspiration.
Mm. Yeah, for me, it's gonna be a bit different because I'm not part of Cold Fusion, but I do have been helping Dagogo produce this podcast. So, but I do some other stuff which are not relevant to the tech world. But in general, if you say what interests me or what informs some of my decisions in video or creative stuff. On the YouTube world, it have to be Vox. I think their graphic design, their attention to detail, and the storytelling has really changed the way like what YouTube videos can be. Even though they're a corporation and stuff, but they really have a bias for high quality, and I think that's something I love about them. And I guess on a personal level, I've always watched Casey Neistat, and I think just again going back to storytelling and how he does things was very incredible. Recently, I watched a lot of Colin and Samir. They're very good in terms of understanding what the YouTube world is about. But in terms of podcasts, I have a variety of things that I listen to. Like Reply All is a great podcast. Anything by Gimlet is great. So yeah, if you're looking into similar podcasts, those are some to look at. So again, thanks for the question, Jonathan. Vic asks or says that that was amazing. This is in one of the episodes. He says it was amazing. I listened to all of the podcasts you've posted so far. Great work. I've got a question. As you discussed, crypto and markets are tanking, and the world is going through several geopolitical issues. Is there any spark of recession? And companies like Microsoft and Gartner gave statements that around 40% of global workforce either switched or are looking for a new job in 2021. So, will the global workforce continue to switch jobs irrespective of this market micro crashes?
Okay. First question first. Is there a hint of a recession? I'd say definitely so. Um, Mainly because essentially the Fed is pushing America, for one, and all central banks are essentially pushing their own nations into a recession because they want to destroy demand, because they can't do anything on the supply side. So this is because of inflation, obviously. Inflation's rising. So they can't do anything on the demand side. So, I mean, sorry, on the supply side, because they can't create products or destroy products, but they can do something on the demand side. So make money harder to get, so make loans harder to come by because the interest rate has risen. And that essentially traditionally pushes countries into negative GDP for 2 quarters, which is a recession, if they keep on going. And also the bond market, which is kind of talking about the price of money, is forecasting that rates will fall again in 2023, which means that they're saying that central banks are going to reverse their policy because they need to stimulate again, essentially. So at that point, they're set, like the bond market is saying in 2023 we might have an issue. So yeah, that's I guess the first question. So recession maybe next year.
Yeah.
And the second question was if the
The global workforce will
workforce.
continue to switch jobs despite the market micro crashes because, like Microsoft and Gartner said that 40% either looking for a new job or have already switched in 2021.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I guess workplace behavior has just been so battered around by the different things coming at people over the past couple of years. It's hard to predict what people are going to do. But I guess the last movement we saw was people leaving the workforce in a large number because they'd had enough or something else. And now we're kind of seeing the people trying to come back to work or figure that out. Um, so I guess it may just be like some people are successful, others may not be as much. Maybe there'll be people trying to start online businesses or finding other avenues to make money. Really, that's just a big question mark. I'm not too sure, but do you have any thoughts on that, sort of?
Yeah, on the recession side, I think I agree with what you said. On the last question, I think, as you mentioned, as we mentioned, I think a couple episodes back about the Great Regret, which basically was a study about the people who left their jobs during the Resignation, right? And what it found was that a lot of people were starting to regret a little bit about getting into a new job or leaving it on a whim kind of thing. So I think there will be people who are looking at it differently of what work life means,
Mm.
but I think people who have switched already might also be looking at coming back to getting some sort of structure because I think those 2 years of the pandemic, a lot of us felt that we can do whatever we want kind of thing, and we probably felt that we didn't want the schedule or the structure. Some liked it, some didn't. So I think it's going to be a mix of things, right? But if we were to compare before the pandemic and after, I would say there's definitely more people looking at newer ways to which they can make money and to which they can make a living versus before the pandemic for sure. So
Mm.
I think that's what I'd say.
So you agree with Elon Musk saying it's making people lazy, the
Oh,
pandemic?
don't putting words in my mouth, Dagogo. For
I'm just,
we,
I'm
we,
just.
we gotta have lawyers before I start agreeing with anything that Elon Musk
Yeah.
puts out. The final one for the day. Xavier Jones says, I wanted you guys to elaborate more on workplace anxiety and decision fatigue. Both of you are content creators and have successful corporate careers. I wanted to ask what you do to manage stress and time while working in a competitive corporate environments while balancing your personal goals and endeavors. Thanks, Xavier. A very, very personal question. But yeah, to go, but I'll let you
Actually, I'll
answer
start with you
first.
for this one.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, 'Cause I think there's a few layers to it. The first thing you mentioned is how do you deal with workplace anxiety and decision fatigue. I think This is very individual to the workplace that you're in, or the environment you're on. Um, uh, Everything that I've been doing over the last few years has been focusing on this one North Star. And the way I would define it is, I don't know how old you are, but say you're 30 and you want to look at your life at 40, right? And take a blank piece of paper and write down that where do I want my life to be at 40? Like, and be very specific. Like, do I want to live in the city I'm in? Do I want to earn the same amount of money or more? Do I want to, have a family, have a house? Like, be as detailed as you can. Think of an ideal life at 40. And then what you do is track back. Basically, you start doing everything that contributes to that life, that goal that you have, and try taking decisions that will contribute to that goal. So if that decision brings a little bit of anxiety, then you got to ride through it, right? You got to be like, oh, it's part of the package, it's part of the process. But if that decision, means that like you're at a workplace and it doesn't add to that goal, then maybe it's time to think of a different workplace or a different strategy, or something like that. I know sometimes it might be difficult. It's easier said than done to just simply leave a workplace, but I would say that talking to your higher ups or your department leaders, or finding someone to work with, is probably the best way possible. And if that isn't even possible, then again, I'd say maybe start looking at ways through which you can still build towards that goal, but maybe a separate path or a separate workplace, right? I think that's helped me personally, because obviously anxiety and fatigue, it will have will we will have it, no matter, even in the careers that you love doing, right? I think even if you're in the best job ever, you still have to work hard. You still have to do some stuff that you won't like, and when you know it's for a good important cause, you'll ride through it. So that's that helps me manage my stress a little bit better. In terms of corporate competitive environments, I think Dagogo and I, we've spoken about this in the past. We're not big fans of how some big corporations work in terms of building teams. I think it's very archaic. It's not what you should have, in a lot of ways. But again, it just really depends on what your environment is. And I personally, if I see like a very toxic culture, I'll try to stay away from office politics, or just try and move away from it. Like, build a plan, maybe not quit tomorrow, but build like a 6 month plan that, okay, maybe I'll start keeping this at bay while applying for new jobs, or something like that. So yeah, that's what I do. Just having a north star is what helps me keep my stress at bay.
Nice, nice. I guess for me, like the corporate idea, like it's something I haven't really dealt with for a long time, because I've been doing stuff independently, so I'm not really the best person to ask for that. But in terms of like dealing with stress and anxiety, I think what Tawsif said is quite important, like keeping the big picture in mind. So it's like, you might be working hard on this one thing, but you got to think about what's this all going towards, and like that this is a small step in like a bigger picture, so it doesn't get too overwhelming and trying to either do everything at once, or focusing on like hyper focusing on one little thing. It's kind of got to be, a holistic approach in the way that you're working. I think that's quite important. And also just, taking time for yourself and finding what you really do enjoy, and realizing how that makes you feel, and using that in ways for, a release of some kind, in terms of like when you're stressed or something, just to chill out, or just do what you enjoy doing. I think that balance
Very
is
important.
extremely important. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's it I got to say.
Yeah, no, thanks for the questions, Avery. I hope things get better for you. But that's it for our show today. It was a
Mm.
short one, even though it's almost 50 plus minutes. But we didn't have a lot of topics. We just tried covering as much as we could. But hopefully, we'll do this in the studio next time around.
Yes, next week. Next week. Yeah, well, thanks everyone for watching. I hope you did get something out of this, and hopefully the setup wasn't too crazy and you can hear me all right. But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon for the next episode. So until next time, have a good one.